Israel gives the go-ahead for 20 trucks to cross into Gaza to deliver precious humanitarian aid this week.
Europe steps up security as the Israel-Hamas conflict triggers a rise in bomb threats and anti-Semitic offences.
Trucks stuck at the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt are to be allowed to deliver their precious cargo of humanitarian aid. Israel has given the go-ahead for 20 trucks carrying food, water and medicine to pass this week. It comes as US President Joe Biden left after his visit to Israel. Egypt's leader sanctioned the move after a Biden call from Air Force One. Biden's mission had been to prevent a wider escalation of the conflict in the region, but key leaders cancelled a summit, and in the end it was only Israeli politicians he met.
Israel agreed humanitarian assistance can begin to move from Egypt to Gaza. But let me be clear, if Hamas diverts or steals the assistance, they will have demonstrated once again that they have no concern for the welfare of the Palestinian people.
According to officials, the death toll has risen to 471 after the Al-Hali hospital blast. The bloody explosion set Biden's diplomatic intentions. The US president has accepted Israel's strong denial of any involvement in the tragedy. It claims it was caused by a misfired Palestinian militant rocket. Hamas and much of the Arab world blames Israel for the blast. Huge anti-Israel protests continue in the Middle East. The blast at the hospital has heightened anger already boiling over to Israel's bombardment and blockade of Gaza. The death toll in the Palestinian enclave has risen above 3,000, but some families of those taken hostage by Hamas are furious at the report of aid allowed into Gaza.
Following the Gaza hospital blast, angry protests have flared up across the Middle East and elsewhere in solidarity with Palestinians. In Jordan, thousands of people blaming the strike on Israel gathered outside the Israeli embassy in Amman. In Lebanon, police used water cannons and tear gas to disperse protesters near the US embassy in Beirut. In the West Bank, dozens of Palestinians clashed with Israeli soldiers in Hebron, and 2 Palestinian teenagers were shot dead by Israeli forces during protests in Ramallah. Israel's Defense Force says it's looking into the incident. Protesters also took to the streets of other towns in the area, including Nablus. In Egypt, thousands rallied in Cairo, Alexandria and other cities, calling on the country to cut ties with Israel. On Tuesday evening, there was a large demonstration in Baghdad's Tahrir Square. Iraqi forces prevented protesters from crossing a bridge to the green zone where US forces are stationed. In the Tunisian capital, thousands of people gathered outside France's embassy, calling for the dismissal of the French and US ambassadors. And in Istanbul and Ankara, crowds clashed with police outside the Israeli consulate and embassy. Turkey plans 3 days of national mourning. In Iran, the French and British embassies were pelted with eggs by protesters who also burnt Israeli flags. And in New York, police drew a line between pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli supporters facing off against one another in Washington Square Park.
The Israel-Hamas conflict is stoking fear across Europe. On Wednesday, French authorities evacuated 7 airports after receiving emailed bomb threats. Regional airports, including Toulouse and Lyon, closed temporarily. It comes just days after a teacher was stabbed to death in northeastern France in what the government called a terrorist attack. In Germany, police have made dozens of arrests for anti-Semitic offences after the Hamas attack in Israel nearly 2 weeks ago. On Tuesday, 2 men threw Molotov cocktails at a synagogue in Berlin. Police are still looking for the offenders. Chancellor Olaf Scholz has denounced the attack.
There were 2 Molotov cocktails thrown on the building at around 4 o'clock in the morning. So thanks God, nothing happened. The bottles apparently didn't reach the building. They fell on the street.
A rise in anti-Israel sentiment has prompted governments in Italy, Germany, Belgium and France to increase security, particularly around synagogues and Jewish schools. There's also been an increase in false threats, leading to the evacuation of public spaces.
MEPs in the European Parliament debated for the first time together this latest escalating war between Hamas and Israel. The discussion was dominated with varying opinions on Israel's right to defend itself and Palestinian and Israeli civilians' right to be protected under international humanitarian law. President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who has been accused by member states and others of being too one-sided when it comes to the rights of citizens on both sides, insists there's no contradiction in her position.
Israel has the right to self-defense in line with international law. Hamas are terrorists, and the Palestinian people are also suffering from that terror, and we have to support them. And there is no contradiction in standing in solidarity with Israel and acting on the humanitarian needs of the Palestinian people.
It's been 11 days since Hamas militants massacred around 2,000 Israeli civilians and continues to hold 200 hostage, while over 3,500 Palestinians, a quarter of them children, have been killed by Israel in response. The EU, meanwhile, has been struggling to speak with one coherent voice. These MEPs say the EU is not credible unless it can agree on some basic facts.
Condemn the attack of a terrorist organization, Hamas. Of course, protect innocent civilians. Of course, naturally provide humanitarian aid. But we need to recognize Israel's right, its unequivocal right to self-defense. And yes, in accordance with international humanitarian law. And of course, call for the hostages to be released unconditionally and immediately. That's the common message. And you know what? If we can't unite around that common message, then frankly, shame on us.
Gaza, it's a kind of open-air prison, and it used to be for the last years like it is now. So we have to be conscious of that. And even the last 6 months events of the far-right government of Netanyahu are not helping us to understand what's the position of the Israeli authorities right now.
Meanwhile, across Europe and the United States, there are fears that countries like Iran and Russia will use the opportunity of this latest armed conflict as a reason to sow even more tensions. EU sources are saying that Russia is already painting the European Union as a hypocrite for not defending equally the rights of Palestinian civilians with those of Israelis, just like they did with Ukraine. Shona Murray, Euronews, Strasbourg.
Rescue workers accessing damaged buildings in Zaporizhia. The area was hit by Russian missile strikes overnight. At least 3 people were killed in the attack, but rescuers say more may still be under the rubble. Russia targets towns in Ukraine every night, often located far from the front line. But Moscow denies causing civilian casualties. On Wednesday, the Russian Defense Ministry released footage it says shows its drone operators neutralizing Ukrainian troops near a village in the Zaporizhia region. Further south, in the region of Kherson, there were reports of massive shelling on Tuesday, with at least 3 people wounded. Kyiv says an area near the university was hit, damaging buildings and roads.
This is a train station where Jewish people were first deported by the Nazis. Now a place for people across German society to gather and remember. Yesterday was the 82nd anniversary of the beginning of deportations in Berlin. The loss of life now made more poignant this year after the Israel-Hamas war. A minute of silence was held for victims during the ceremony. Konrad Kutz was one of the attendees. He created this memorial next to the station, a collection of books about the Holocaust. It was destroyed by a suspected arson attack in August. Kutz says the station has attracted Jewish people wanting to learn more about their family history.
They come from Israel, they come from USA, they wanted to see this place where their grandparents, for instance, were deported into Auschwitz or other regions.
Across the city, a group of activists clean memorials marking where Jewish people who were deported and killed by the Nazis had lived. These are known as Stolpersteine, or stumbling blocks. They were laid down first in Germany. Now they can be found across Europe. The stumbling block started as an art project in the 1990s. The hope was that names of Jewish people who were taken away were not forgotten. Today, the blocks mark the names of other victims of the Nazis, such as members of the LGBT community. One of the organizers says remembering this history is important in Germany and other European countries because of the rise of the far right.
Und wir müssen immer wieder daran denken, wie das geschehen ist, warum es geschehen ist, und wir müssen sagen, nie wieder. Und für ein Nie wieder stehen wir, und deswegen machen wir das, damit auch die Leute rumrum alle mitbekommen, aha, wir müssen alle aufpassen auf unsere Demokratie. Und das müssen wir.
Back at the train station, Kutz says he hopes the fire at his library memorial will be a lesson for the next generation.
And also they say this burned down library, and it is not forgotten. You are not allowed to forget this, and it has happened today too, once more.
FC Barcelona president Joan Laporta has been hit with bribery charges amid an investigation into alleged illegal payments of more than €7 million made to José María Enríquez Negreira, the former vice president of the technical committee of referees. Laporta, who has been charged in relation to his first spell as president of Barcelona from 2003 to 2010, has consistently denied any wrongdoing, maintaining that the payments were made for legitimate consulting work. These charges come ahead of the highly anticipated La Liga match between Barcelona and Real Madrid.